Right. Ready to dive into something we all know a little something about, right? Those those quirky things our partners do. The things that we somehow, I don't know, just put up with.
Oh, absolutely.
And we've got a great source today that breaks down these relationship quirks. And it does it with a good dose of humor, which I appreciate. So I'm excited to kind of unpack it all.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how these little things, these quirks can really tell us a lot about the dynamics of a relationship, right? Like how
Yeah.
we tolerate things, how we communicate about them.
Right.
All of it speaks volumes about how we connect and how strong that bond really is.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So we're going deep on, it's called 15 Things People Tolerate in Relationships.
Okay.
And our source, I'll say, doesn't hold back.
All right. I like it. No holds barred.
Yeah, no holds barred. So we're going to uncover why we put up with these habits,
Why?
what they say about us, maybe even a little bit about, how to deal with them
Yeah.
without, resorting to separate bedrooms.
Oh, yeah. Although sometimes separate bedrooms can be a very healthy choice.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, I'm interested to see what they have to say.
Yeah, yeah. So our source kind of breaks it down into two categories.
Right.
And the first one is, they call it tolerable nonsense.
Tolerable nonsense. I love that.
Right.
Yeah.
So these are the things, maybe we like to complain about, but we kind of accept them.
Yeah. You roll your eyes, but you kind of chuckle to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So kicking it off, it's a classic. It is snoring.
Oh, the dreaded snoring.
Yes, the dreaded snoring.
Yeah.
Our source actually compares it to sleeping next to a chainsaw,
Oh, wow.
which, pretty vivid imagery.
That's a strong image.
So is there any scientific reason why we tolerate this? Even when it's that loud?
Well, it's interesting because studies on sleep and how our brain processes sound show that our brains can actually be wired to kind of filter out familiar noises when we're asleep. And this is something that would have helped our ancestors, way back when, survive. So basically, if they were ignoring, harmless rustling in the leaves, they stayed asleep and they were alert to real danger.
Wow.
So over time, your brain might learn to partially tune out a partner's snoring, even if it sounds like a construction zone to everyone else.
Oh, wow. So it's evolution at work,
It could be.
not just love,
Yeah, yeah. Maybe a little bit of both.
keeping us snoozing peacefully. But I'm guessing there's a limit, right? Like, our brains can only filter so much.
Absolutely. Our brains are powerful, but they can only handle so much. And, chronic loud snoring, that can actually be a sign of a sleep disorder,
Right.
which, disrupts sleep for both partners.
Yeah.
So if it's really causing problems, it's absolutely worth addressing.
Right.
Talk to a doctor, talk to a medical professional. There are solutions out there that can help both partners get a good night's sleep.
Love might be blind, but we shouldn't ignore potential health issues.
That's
Okay. Moving on to something that I think we've all experienced. The battle for the remote control.
the remote control. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a good one.
A classic.
Such a common scenario. And it makes you think, like, what does this really symbolize? What does this battle for control really mean?
Right. It's more than just the remote. Our source jokes about going from your favorite show to, and I quote, the mating habits of sloths,
Oh my goodness.
which, very specific.
That is a very specific example, and I think it speaks to the deeper issue here, right? Which is control and compromise.
Yes.
Research on decision making in couples shows that even small choices, like what to watch on TV, it can become really loaded with meaning.
Right.
It's whose interests are we prioritizing? Who gets to decide?
Yeah.
And these little things, they can kind of reflect the overall power dynamic in the relationship.
That's so true. It's not really about the sloths.
It's not about the sloth.
Or is it?
Maybe a little bit.
I don't know. Yeah. I think you're right. It's about feeling heard, feeling respected,
Yes.
and, maybe expanding your partner's horizons
A little bit.
beyond the animal kingdom.
That's right. It's about finding that balance between what each person wants, but also creating those shared experiences that you can enjoy together.
Yeah.
And successful couples, they figure out how to negotiate these choices. Maybe they take turns.
Yeah.
Maybe they discover some shows they both enjoy. Maybe it's just respecting each other's me time
Right.
with the TV.
Okay. This next one is classic. I'm putting it in the tolerable nonsense category. It is the I'm not hungry lie. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
When your partner claims they don't want any of your delicious food, and then suddenly half of it is gone.
Mysteriously vanishes.
Right. What is going on there? Is it subconscious? Is it like a secret relationship language we don't know about? What is it?
It is really interesting. I mean, it could be a couple of things. This idea of social desirability bias might be at play here,
Okay.
which is basically this tendency to present ourselves, favorably to others.
Right.
So they might initially say, "Oh, no, I don't want to be polite." They don't want to seem greedy.
Right.
But then, they see the delicious aroma, they see you enjoying it, and then suddenly it's too hard to resist.
Right.
Then there's this thing called the scarcity principle,
Okay.
which is basically when something seems limited, we tend to want it more.
Ah, okay.
So, seeing you enjoy that food might suddenly make it way more desirable.
Okay. So, like, they're trying to be good.
They're trying to be good.
But, like, their senses and, like, psychological principles,
Their senses betray them.
betray them.
Exactly.
I love it. It's like a fascinating look into just how complex humans are,
Oh, yeah.
even with, like, simple things like food.
Even with simple things.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I think it also shows how much communication happens beneath the surface.
Yes.
Maybe subconsciously they were hoping you would offer again. Maybe they were testing your generosity.
Right.
It's like a subtle dance
Right.
of unspoken needs and desires.
I love that. The dance of the relationship.
Oh.
Okay. We're on a roll with tolerable nonsense.
Yeah.
Up next is something our source compares to living in a reality show. Bathroom habits.
Oh, the shared bathroom. Yeah, that's a good one.
Right. A true test of compatibility.
A true test.
Our source, they mentioned the classic toilet seat up or down.
Yeah.
But I think it's even bigger than that.
Yeah.
It's about personal space, hygiene, all those little things that are magnified, I think, when you're sharing a bathroom.
Absolutely. When you're single, your bathroom is like your sanctuary. It's your space.
Right.
But in a relationship, that becomes a shared space.
Right.
And that requires, adjustments. You need to communicate about what your needs are, your expectations, because no one wants their morning routine to become a battle.
Yeah, absolutely not. And finally, we have, I think, a very modern relationship challenge.
Okay.
The binge-watching trap.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
That's a good one.
Because it's so easy to fall into it.
Absolutely.
But our source, it's funny, they describe it as questioning all your life choices at dawn after you've been up all night watching, episode after episode after episode.
Yeah, it's like you're in a trance almost, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So is this like a self-control issue? Or is there something deeper going on?
That's a really good question. I think, binge watching, it really taps into a couple of things. One is our desire for connection, right?
Right.
And then the other is escapism.
Yeah.
So it can definitely be a way to unwind, a way to bond with your partner, right?
Right.
But like with anything else, moderation is key.
Yeah.
Because if it becomes the dominant form of interaction, it can really hinder having deeper conversations and sharing those real-life experiences that you can't get on a screen.
It's about finding balance.
It's about finding balance.
Enjoying the shows together,
Yes,
but also making sure you're making time for those real-life things.
exactly.
The conversations, the moments, everything.
Otherwise, you might end up feeling like you're living in a TV show rather than, in your actual life.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so we've done tolerable nonsense. Now we're moving on to the second category that our source calls out, which is endearing quirks.
Endearing quirks. Okay, I like that. That sounds more positive.
Right.
So these are the things that are maybe a little bit quirky, but ultimately they're kind of what make our partners unique.
Yeah, exactly. So those things that might make us go, really? You're doing that again? But, deep down, we're kind of charmed by it.
Yeah, you kind of chuckle to yourself and shake your head.
Right, exactly.
But you secretly love it.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, so which quirk are we tackling first in this endearing quirks category?
Well, let's start with something lighthearted.
Okay.
Pet names.
Oh, the pet names.
The pet names.
I'm ready. Our source lists some real gems. Snookums.
Snookums.
Pumpkin.
Even My Little Potato.
Oh, My Little Potato. That's a new one.
I know. Where did these even come from?
It's interesting, right? Because it speaks to this idea that we use pet names in the first place, which is, they're terms of endearment,
Right.
often nonsensical. But research has shown that they actually they create this private language between partners.
Oh, wow.
They actually strengthen the bond, the intimacy.
Mhm.
And couples who use these private nicknames, they tend to report higher relationship satisfaction. They feel more secure in the connection.
That's fascinating.
And it's probably because these terms are, symbolic representation of their shared history, their unique bond.
Right, right. So like a really sweet inside joke.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like an inside joke.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I mean, sometimes they're just plain weird, right?
Sometimes they're a little strange.
But hey, if both partners are on board with like the My Little Potato situation, if they're both on board, that's all that matters.
Who we to judge.
Exactly. It's about what works for that couple.
Right.
And speaking of personal preferences, let's move on to another endearing quirk,
Okay.
the fashion police.
Oh, yeah.
That moment when you hear that dreaded phrase, are you really going to wear that?
Uh-oh.
Right. Our source, they suggest that it's basically code for, I'm embarrassed to be seen with you.
Ouch.
Yeah. A little harsh, maybe.
A little harsh.
But it does speak to this complex dynamic of personal style and, the desire for approval.
Right.
We all want to be attractive to our partners, but we also want them to present themselves, in a way that we find appealing.
Right. Right. It's natural.
It's totally natural. But it can be a bit tricky to navigate.
So it's not necessarily about, controlling their choices,
Not necessarily.
but more about, I don't know, feeling proud, wanting them to, look their best or maybe fit a certain image.
I think it's a mix of things. It's definitely about attraction.
Right.
We want our partner to be attractive to us, and let's be honest, to other people too.
Right.
But there's also this idea of representing yourselves as a couple.
Okay.
Do your styles complement each other?
Oh, interesting.
Do they kind of project this image that you want to, project as a unit?
It's fascinating how, clothes can become so loaded
Yeah,
in a relationship.
definitely.
And speaking of potentially loaded topics, let's move on to food preferences.
Ah, yes. Food. A topic that can make or break a date, let alone a long-term relationship.
Right.
Right.
Our source paints this very funny picture of, a sushi lover and a sushi hater ending up at an all-you-can-eat buffet.
Oh, no.
I know. Which honestly sounds like a recipe for disaster.
That does not sound like a good combination.
Right. So how do couples with completely different tastes make it work?
I think compromise is a big one, right?
Yeah.
And a willingness to maybe step outside of your comfort zone a little bit. It's about finding common ground. Exploring some new cuisines together.
Right.
Maybe even having those dedicated food nights
Okay.
where each person gets to choose. And sometimes, it's simply accepting that you're never going to agree on certain foods. And that's okay.
Right.
You can still enjoy meals together, even if you're not always eating the same thing.
Yeah, it's not just about the food.
No.
It's about the shared experience.
It's about the experience.
and the willingness to accommodate,
Exactly.
which really, I think, is something that applies to so many areas of a relationship.
Absolutely. Food is just one example of, how we navigate those differences
Yeah.
and how we find ways to connect even when our tastes don't perfectly align.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now for a quirk that I think many of us might recognize,
Okay, hit me with it.
those late night deep talks.
Hmm?
Those moments where you're ready to drift off
Yeah.
and suddenly your partner is ready to, hash out everything.
They're ready to have those deep, meaningful conversations.
Yes.
Yes. Why does this happen?
I know. Our source describes it as suddenly your partner wants to discuss their childhood traumas while you're just trying not to snore, which I think is hilarious.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's so relatable.
It's so relatable. So
Yeah.
is there a reason why this happens?
I think there are a few things at play here. First of all, bedtime. It really provides this rare moment of quiet and intimacy.
Right.
We're relaxed.
Right.
There are no distractions.
Yeah.
And it just feels like a safe space to open up.
Right. But for the partner who's trying to sleep, it's like, what is happening?
It can feel a little bit like an ambush.
Yeah, like an ambush.
Yeah.
So any advice?
I think clear communication is vital.
Okay.
If you're someone who really needs to kind of unwind and decompress before bed and your partner is prone to these late night confessions,
Yeah.
it's important to kind of set some boundaries
Okay.
and find a time that works for both of you to have those conversations.
Okay, great advice. Because those conversations, they're important.
They are important.
But maybe not when one person is already halfway to dreamland.
Agreed.
Okay. ready to venture into sometimes treacherous
I
territory.
think so. What is it?
In-laws.
Oh, the in-laws.
Yes.
The in-laws.
Our source compares navigating family dynamics to competing in the Olympics,
Oh, wow. Okay.
which I think is pretty accurate.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
So how do we navigate this? What is it about? Setting boundaries, managing expectations,
Hmm?
or maybe just like finding the humor.
I think it's a combination of all of those things.
Okay.
Communication with your partner, it's essential.
Right.
You need to discuss your expectations for those interactions.
Right.
You want to present this united front when you're dealing with, potential conflicts.
Yeah.
And yes, finding the humor in those awkward moments can be an absolute lifesaver.
Okay.
It's about remembering that you and your partner, you're a team.
Right.
And you're supporting each other.
Yeah.
Through those, family gatherings that can
Yeah.
be challenging sometimes.
So it's like being teammates.
It's like being teammates in the in-law Olympics.
In the in-law Olympics. I love that.
Yes.
That's great.
And just like in the actual Olympics, teamwork, communication, a little bit of humor can help you go for the gold, which is that harmonious relationship with your in-laws.
I love that. I'm here for that. Okay, we're cruising through these endearing quirks. What's up next?
Let's talk about pets.
Okay.
And specifically when a partner seems to be more, smitten with their furry friend than with their human one.
Oh, correct.
Right. Our source, they paint this picture of basically becoming second fiddle to a cat who gets more attention than you do.
Right, right. Okay, so is this a sign of trouble, or is it just like harmless love for their pet?
Well, I think it's all about balance and perspective. Pets, they bring so much joy to our lives.
Yeah.
It's natural to have a strong bond with them. However, we do have to remember that our human relationships, they require different kinds of attention. They require nurturing.
Right.
So if you're feeling neglected, or if you feel like your partner's priorities are just completely out of whack,
Yeah.
it's crucial to communicate that. Be open.
Yeah.
Be honest. And for the pet-obsessed partners out there,
Yeah.
remember, balance that love for your furry friend with, quality time and attention for your human companion.
Yeah.
Those belly rubs can wait.
Right.
Those feather wand sessions can wait. But your partner's emotional needs, those shouldn't have to wait.
I love that. Solid advice. So we don't want our partners feeling like they need to learn how to fetch to get some attention.
Exactly. Exactly. It's all about making sure both you and your partner feel loved, appreciated.
Right. Okay. And speaking of potential sources of frustration,
Oh, okay. What do we have here?
let's move on to a quirk that I think, let's be honest, we're all guilty of sometimes.
Okay.
Procrastination.
Oh, procrastination.
The I'll do it later syndrome. A classic.
The I'll do it later classic relationship challenge.
Right.
Right.
And our source, they call it living with a time traveler who keeps pushing everything into tomorrow forever.
Forever. Oh, man.
Right.
That's a good one.
It's, it's funny, but it's also true. So procrastination, where does it stem from?
It could be a lot of different things. It could be a fear of failure. It could be perfectionism.
Okay.
Maybe just feeling completely overwhelmed.
Okay. So it's not always laziness.
Not always.
Okay.
It could be, like you said, it could be deeper emotional stuff, psychological barriers
Right.
that are kind of preventing them from taking action.
And then in a relationship, it can be a real problem, right?
It can be a problem.
Because then one person feels like they're carrying the brunt of it.
Absolutely. It's essential to really identify what's the root cause.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this procrastination happening? And then, work together to develop some healthy coping mechanisms.
Okay.
Open communication is so important.
Yes.
Talk about why your partner might be procrastinating. Help them break down those tasks.
Right.
Make it smaller steps.
Right.
Easier to manage. And create a system of shared responsibility.
Yeah.
Because a relationship, it's a partnership.
Yes.
It's not a dictatorship.
I love that.
It's not a dictatorship of chores.
That's such a good point. It's about working together, figuring out a system that feels fair, supporting each other.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Even through the less exciting things.
Even through the less exciting things.
Okay, we're on a roll. What other endearing quirks are coming up?
Let's talk about communication styles.
Okay.
And specifically the art of storytelling.
Okay.
Or in some cases, the art of overly detailed storytelling.
Oh, I know this one. Our source describes it as getting a full-blown novel when you just ask for a quick recap of their day.
You just wanted the highlights, but you got the whole unabridged version.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Why do some people do this? Is it like attention?
It could be.
Do they love the sound of their own voice?
Maybe.
Or is it just like a different way of like processing?
I think it's probably a blend of all those things.
Okay.
You know, some people, they're just natural storytellers. They love those details. They want to, like, paint this vivid picture.
Okay.
And other people, they're much more concise,
Yeah.
to the point.
Right.
And, you know, sometimes it's just about how we process and how we retain information.
Okay.
Some people, they remember and they share every little detail.
Right.
And others, they focus on just those key highlights.
Yeah. Okay. So how do we bridge this communication gap?
That's a good question. I think it's really about finding a middle ground
Okay.
and respecting each other's style.
Right.
You know, if you're the detailed storyteller,
Yeah.
try to be mindful of your audience, of their time. You know, maybe practice summarizing.
Oh.
Hit those key points. And, you know, if you're the listener,
Yeah.
you know, practice those active listening skills.
Sure.
Ask clarifying questions.
Okay.
And, you know, maybe gently steer the conversation back on track.
Yeah.
If it starts to veer too far off course.
Right. Yeah.
It's a two-way street. It's about, you know, expressing yourself,
Yeah.
but also being receptive to your partner's style.
Maybe having a signal, like wrap it up. I don't know.
A discreet signal.
Yeah.
That could be helpful.
Right. Now, this next one, it's particularly relevant, I think, in the age of social media.
Okay.
Oversharing.
Oversharing. Yes.
Right.
It's a good one.
That tendency to broadcast every detail online, from like the most mundane to the deeply personal.
From what they had for breakfast to, you know, their deepest, darkest secrets.
I know. And our source points out this contrast between, like, you know, those cute, harmless couple pics
Right.
versus like the excessive, like, relationship details.
You're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Too much information.
Right. Where you're like, are you auditioning for a reality show?
Exactly. Exactly.
So, I mean, how do we navigate this? Is it about setting boundaries? Is it about having those open conversations?
Absolutely. I think, you know, in a world where everybody seems to be documenting everything,
Right.
open communication is key.
Okay.
You know, talk to your partner about what you're both comfortable sharing.
Okay.
Establish some boundaries.
Yeah.
And if you're the one who's more private,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to assert those boundaries, even if your partner is more of a, you know, a social media butterfly.
Right. Right.
It's about finding that balance, that comfort level for both of you.
And a gentle reminder, maybe, for those who overshare, that not everything needs to be public.
Yeah, some things are okay to keep private.
Yes.
Some moments are best savored just between the two of you.
Right. And without the pressure of likes and comments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's about, you know, expressing your connection, but also respecting the intimacy of that relationship.
I love that. Okay. And finally, to wrap up this first part of our deep dive, let's talk about a quirk that's both endearing and potentially suffocating. The sleepy cuddle cling.
Oh, the sleepy cuddle cling. Yes.
Right.
A classic.
The art of transforming from individual sleepers into like this tangled mass of limbs overnight.
Yes, you go to sleep as two individuals and you wake up as one giant blob.
Right.
It's amazing.
Our source describes it as waking up in a human pretzel because they've wrapped around you like an octopus.
Oh my gosh, that's a vivid image.
I know. So what is the science behind this? Is it just warmth and comfort? Or is there something like more primal going on?
You know, it's a really fascinating mix of biology and psychology. You know, physical touch, especially cuddling,
Yeah.
it releases this hormone called oxytocin. You've probably heard of it, sometimes called the love hormone.
Right.
It promotes bonding. It reduces stress. It makes you feel more secure, more connected.
Wow.
So while warmth and comfort are definitely factors, it goes deeper than that. It's
Okay.
about really seeking that closeness
Okay.
to reinforce that emotional bond.
Okay. So it's not just about like stealing the blankets.
No, it's not just about the blankets. It's about that deeper need for connection, even while we're sleeping.
That's fascinating. But like our source jokingly suggests, waking up in a human pretzel isn't exactly ideal.
No, not always.
So how do we find that balance between, you know, enjoying those cuddles, but also maintaining some personal space?
Well, communication, as always, is key.
Of course.
Talk to your partner.
Right?
Figure out what sleeping positions work best for both of you.
Okay.
Find compromises.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you start the night cuddling and then as you drift off, you gently untangle yourselves, or maybe you alternate,
Yeah.
nights of spooning with nights of, giving each other a little more space.
Right.
It's about finding a rhythm that works
Yeah.
so that everyone wakes up feeling refreshed and, well, not pretzel shaped.
Right. Exactly. Not pretzel shaped. All right. Ready to explore another quirk.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
This one might require some deep breaths and a good dose of patience.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm all about, understanding those complexities,
Yeah.
even the parts that are a little bit frustrating.
Okay, good. Because let's talk about that, I'll do it later, phenomenon. Procrastination.
Oh, yeah, procrastination.
We've all been there, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Whether we're the one procrastinating or the one kind of dealing with the consequences.
Yeah, the one who's left picking up the slack.
Exactly, exactly. Our source, it's funny, they call it living with a time traveler who keeps pushing everything into tomorrow forever.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a good one.
It's so true, though.
It is, and it can be funny,
Yeah.
but it can also be really frustrating
Yes.
for the person who's, not procrastinating.
Exactly. So procrastination, where does it even come from?
Well, it can stem from a variety of things.
Right.
Fear of failure is a big one.
Right.
Perfectionism, feeling overwhelmed.
Okay.
Maybe they have too much on their plate.
So it's not always just like laziness.
Not necessarily.
Right.
Like you said, there could be some deeper stuff going on,
Yeah.
psychological barriers or emotional stuff that's kind of preventing them from taking action.
Right, right. Okay, so in a relationship, procrastination can become a big problem then, right?
It definitely can. And it often does, unfortunately,
Totally.
because it leads to resentment.
Right.
And, that feeling that one person is doing more than their fair share.
Exactly. Yeah. So what's the advice here? What do we do?
Well, like we've been talking about, communication is key. It's so important to talk openly about it,
Yeah.
help each other understand
Okay.
why that procrastination might be happening.
Okay.
Break down tasks into smaller, more manageable steps so it
Uh-huh.
feels less overwhelming. And create a system. Yeah. Share the responsibility, make sure it feels balanced and fair.
Yeah.
Because remember, a relationship is a partnership.
Right.
It's about supporting each other.
Yes.
It's about working together. It's not about one person dictating all the chores.
Right. Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Yeah.
We're in this together.
We are. We're a team.
All right. Speaking of different approaches to tasks and to-do lists, let's move on to another quirk that's kind of communication related. The art of storytelling.
Storytelling. Oh, yeah.
Or in some cases, what our source calls overly detailed storytelling.
Yes. The tendency to provide maybe a bit too much information.
I think we've all experienced this, right?
Yeah.
You ask for a quick recap of someone's day,
You just want the highlights.
and suddenly you're trapped in like a 30-minute saga
Yeah, it's like you're listening to a novel.
with more detail than you ever wanted to know.
Yeah, way more detail than you needed.
Our source, they describe it as getting a full-blown novel when all you wanted was like the SparkNotes version.
Right. Just the summary.
So why do people do this? Like, what is it? Is it a need for attention? Do they just love to hear themselves talk? Or is it just a completely different way of, like, processing information?
It's probably a mix of all of those things.
Okay.
Some people, they are just natural storytellers. They thrive on those details.
Okay.
They want to paint a vivid picture for the listener.
Right.
They want to bring you into their world.
Yeah.
And other people, they're much more concise to the point.
Yeah.
They just want to, get the information across quickly. And sometimes, it really is about how we process information, how we remember it.
Okay.
Some people, they absorb and they retain every little detail.
Right.
And others, they kind of, they filter
Right.
and they focus on just the main points.
Okay. That makes sense. But how do we, like, find that balance? Because I can imagine it can be frustrating for the listener
Absolutely.
to just be, given all this information they didn't necessarily ask for.
So the information overload.
Right. And it can make the storyteller feel like they're not being heard.
Right. So it's really about finding that middle ground.
Yeah.
It's about respecting each other's style
Okay.
and communicating effectively.
Yeah.
If you're the detailed storyteller,
Right.
just be mindful. Be mindful of your audience. Be mindful of their time.
Okay.
Try to practice summarizing those main points.
Okay.
Maybe avoid getting lost in the weeds.
Right. Right.
And if you're the listener,
Yeah.
practice those active listening skills.
Oh,
You
right.
know,
Say it.
ask clarifying questions, show that you're engaged,
Right.
and, gently steer the conversation back on track
Yeah.
if it starts to veer too far off course.
I love that. Okay, so it's a two-way street.
Yeah, it is. It's all about communication.
Expressing yourself, but also being receptive to your partner's way of communicating.
That's right.
Awesome. Now let's move on to a quirk that's especially, I think, common in like today's world, in our hyper-connected world.
Okay.
The tendency to overshare about your relationship on social media.
Oh, social media oversharing. That's a big one.
It is a big one.
It's tricky.
It's tricky, right? It's that fine line between like wanting to share your joy,
Yeah.
but then turning your relationship into like a public spectacle.
Right. It's like how much is too much.
Exactly. And our source, they make this distinction between like those cute couple photos, which, generally harmless,
Yeah.
versus that excessive sharing of details where you're kind of like, are you trying to like write a soap opera?
Yeah. It's like, do we really need to know all of that?
Like, do we need to know every little fight,
Every inside joke,
Every-
detail.
every detail of your daily routine?
Right. Raises questions, right?
It does.
About privacy, boundaries.
What's appropriate.
Right. So how do we deal with this? Well, I think like with so many of these other things, it really comes down to communication.
Okay.
Have those conversations with your partner,
Yeah.
before you start posting things online.
Yeah.
Talk about what you're comfortable sharing,
Right.
what should remain private,
Okay.
and be respectful
Yeah.
of each other's comfort levels,
Oh.
even if one person is a lot more inclined to share than the other.
Yeah.
Find that balance that feels right for both of you.
Yeah. I think it's such a delicate balance these days
It is.
in the age of social media, but a really important one to strike.
Absolutely.
Okay, now let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about a quirk that's less about kind of the digital sharing and more about physical closeness. That
Yeah.
tendency to like cling to your partner while you're sleeping.
Oh, yes. The sleepy cuddle cling.
A classic.
A classic.
Classic. Our source, they paint a pretty vivid picture, I'll say.
Okay.
Waking up in a human pretzel because they've wrapped around you like an octopus.
Oh, my gosh. Yes. I've been there.
I know, right? It's funny, but it also kind of points to the potential downsides of this seemingly harmless, like, behavior.
Mhm.
So why do we do this? Is it just a need for warmth, or is there something more going on?
It really goes beyond just wanting to stay warm.
Okay.
It's deeper than that. Physical touch, particularly that cuddling, that close contact,
Right.
it triggers the release of oxytocin,
Okay.
that hormone that we've been talking about, often called the love hormone.
Right.
It plays such a crucial role in bonding, in reducing stress, and fostering those feelings of security and intimacy.
Wow.
So yes, warmth and comfort, they're factors,
Yeah.
but it's also about that very primal human need to be close, to feel connected,
Yeah.
to reinforce that emotional bond even when we're sleeping.
It's amazing how our like bodies and minds are even working when we're unconscious.
I know, it's incredible, right?
It is incredible, but as funny as it sounds, waking up in a human pretzel isn't exactly ideal.
No, it can be a little uncomfortable.
So how do we balance that need for closeness with, maintaining some personal space?
Communication,
Okay.
talk to each other
Right.
about your sleeping preferences.
Okay.
Find some compromises that work for both of you.
Right.
Maybe you start the night cuddling, and then as you drift off, you gradually untangle.
Well-
Or maybe you alternate nights.
Yeah.
Some nights you spoon, some nights you respect each other's space a little bit more.
Yeah.
The key is to find a rhythm that works for both of you.
Yeah. Yeah. So you both wake up feeling refreshed and ready to go.
Exactly.
So it sounds like those conversations and compromises are key to like navigating all of these relationship quirks, right?
They really are.
Whether it's, snoring or how much time we're spending in front of a screen or, figuring out how to share a bed without turning into a human pretzel.
Absolutely.
We've explored a lot of ground so far.
We have.
Are you ready to dive into a few more of these endearing quirks?
Let's do it. I'm ready for more.
Okay, so we're back and we're diving into more of these endearing quirks that, let's be honest, can sometimes make us scratch our heads and wonder, what are we doing?
Oh, absolutely. Relationships are full of these little mysteries, aren't they?
They really are. So this next one, I think it's something that a lot of people out there can relate to, especially those of us who are, maybe a little bit more on the, sensitive side when it comes to sharing our partner's affection.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's that tendency that some partners have to shower their pets with, like, way more attention than their human counterpart.
Oh, the pet versus partner dilemma. Yes, I've seen this play out in many relationships.
Right. And our source, they put it in a way that I thought was pretty funny, but also, like, kind of stings a little bit. They say it's like becoming second fiddle to a cat who gets more attention than you do.
Ouch, yeah, that one hits close to home for some people.
Yeah, so is this a sign of trouble? Or is this just, like, harmless? You know, they just really love their pet.
Well, I think, like with many things in relationships, it's about balance and perspective.
Right.
Pets bring a lot of joy into our lives, and it's totally normal to have this strong bond with them.
Right.
But we can't forget that human relationships, they need something different.
Okay. Yeah.
They need attention, nurturing in a different way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So if you're feeling neglected or like the priorities are a bit out of whack, it's so important to talk about it.
Yeah.
Be open and honest with your partner. And for those pet-obsessed partners out there, remember, those belly rubs? They can wait.
Right.
That game of fetch can wait. But your partner's needs, those shouldn't have to wait.
I love that. Such a good point. So we don't want our partners feeling like they have to, like, learn how to fetch to get some attention.
Exactly. It's
Okay.
about making sure everyone feels loved and appreciated in the relationship.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. Now, shifting gears a little bit, let's talk about those terms of endearment. You know, those pet names that we give to our significant others. Some are super sweet, some are a little silly, and some, honestly, are just downright strange.
Oh, the pet names. I'm ready for this.
I know, it's a fun one. Our source lists some real gems like Snookums, Pumpkin, even My Little Potato. Like,
Yeah.
where did these even come from?
It's fascinating, isn't it, how we create these little nicknames for the people we love.
It is.
It's like we're creating this private language, this little world of shared meaning just between the two of us.
Yeah.
And actually, linguistic studies have shown that pet names, even the weird ones, they serve a real purpose.
Really?
Yeah, they strengthen the bond between partners, like an inside joke.
Right.
It creates this sense of intimacy and connection that's unique to that couple.
Oh, wow. So it's more than just like a cute quirk. It's like actually building intimacy.
Exactly. It's about solidifying that special bond you have.
Yeah. That's amazing. I guess as long as both people are, okay with it, like if someone wants to be called Snickums or, My Little Potato, who are we to judge?
Exactly. If it works for them, it works for them. And speaking of personal preferences and maybe potential clashes, let's move on to something that can be a little sensitive.
Oh, okay. What's that?
Unsolicited fashion advice.
Oh, yeah. This is a classic. That dreaded phrase. Are you really going to wear that?
Oh, boy. Our source suggests it's basically code for, I'm embarrassed to be seen with you.
Ouch. That's a little harsh, don't you think?
Yeah, it's definitely not the most tactful way to express your opinion, but I do think it speaks to the whole complexity of personal style and how much we crave that partner approval.
Right. We want our partner to look good, but we also want them to, like, express themselves.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance. We want to feel proud of our partner, but we also have to respect their individuality.
So how do we navigate this minefield? I mean, is it about choosing our battles?
I think that's a big part of it. Not every fashion faux pas requires a comment.
Right.
But if there's something you truly feel strongly about, try expressing your opinion gently. Focus on suggestions rather than criticism.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like, hey, maybe that shirt doesn't quite fit right, instead of, what are you thinking?
Exactly. And ultimately, what matters most is that your partner feels confident and comfortable.
That's a good point.
Mm.
It's about their comfort and their style, not just ours. Okay, so we've talked about sharing attention with pets, pet names, fashion advice. Now let's move on to something that I think a lot of us who value our sleep can relate to.
Okay, tell me more.
Those late night deep talks that seem to happen, like right when you're about to drift off.
Oh, yes. The bedtime heart-to-heart. Those can be tricky.
They really can.
Mhm.
Our source describes it perfectly. They say it's like, suddenly your partner wants to discuss their childhood traumas while you're just trying not to snore. It's funny, but also, like, so true.
I've definitely been on both sides of that equation.
Me too.
Hmm.
So why does this happen? Is it like a emotional vulnerability thing, or are some people just wired to be both night owls and deep thinkers?
It's probably a bit of both. Bedtime provides that rare opportunity for quiet and intimacy, right? Distractions are gone, we're relaxed, it feels safe.
Right.
But for the partner who's ready to sleep, it can feel like a bit of an ambush.
Oh, yeah, like, wait, we're doing this now.
Exactly. So if this is a recurring issue, communication, as always, is crucial.
Of course.
Find a time that works for both of you to have these meaningful conversations. Maybe it's earlier in the evening, or you set aside dedicated time on the weekend. It's about respecting each other's needs.
Great advice. Those conversations are definitely important, but maybe not when one person is already halfway to dreamland.
Exactly. Okay, so we've covered so much ground today, from snoring to pet names, those late night talks, all sorts of things. What's your biggest takeaway from all of this?
Honestly, it's that these quirks, these little things that sometimes drive us crazy, they're also what make our relationships unique.
I agree. It's not about finding a partner who's perfect, but about learning to navigate those imperfections, to communicate, to compromise, to find that balance.
Yes, it's about embracing those differences and finding joy in the journey, even if that journey involves a few snoring episodes, maybe some questionable outfit choices,
Yeah.
and yeah, even the occasional late-night therapy session right before bed.
Exactly. It's all part of the adventure. Embrace the quirks, keep those conversations flowing, and remember, even those frustrating habits can often become endearing over time.
They really can. And who knows, maybe one day you'll find yourself calling your partner my little potato with a genuine smile on your face.
That's a thought.
Well, until next time, Deep Divers, keep exploring, keep connecting, and remember, love is a journey, not a destination. Embrace the quirks along the way.